so exhausting for the body and the mind.
It really is. It makes me think of this visual, like imagine you are caught in this massive freezing blizzard and you manage to find this heavy armored winter coat.
Okay, I like this.
Right. So it is incredibly thick. It weighs like 50 pounds and it restricts your movement, but it literally saves your life. It keeps you from freezing to death in the storm.
Because it's a survival tool.
Exactly.
Right.
But then the storm passes, the seasons change. It is now the middle of a beautiful 80-degree summer day, and you refuse to take the coat off.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You're sweating, you're miserable, you can't hug anyone, you can't swim. The very thing that saved you in the blizzard is now literally suffocating you in the summer.
That is such a visceral way to look at it. You know, you're walking around in July wondering why everything is so difficult and exhausting, but you are utterly terrified to take the coat off.
Because the brain remembers.
Right. Your nervous system remembers that the coat is the only reason you didn't die in the storm.
Okay, but hold on. I want to push back on this a little bit. I'm struggling with the logic of this.
Sure. What part?
Well, if the brain created this armored coat to keep us safe, why does it punish us by making us repeat the same miserable financial mistakes? Or like driving us back to people who treat us terribly?
Ah, I see what you mean.
Right. If it wants to protect us, why choose the path that clearly causes us so much pain?
Well, it's because the survival-driven brain does not understand the difference between safe and familiar. To your amygdala, familiar equals safe.
Wait, really? Even if it's awful?
Even if the familiar situation is painful or chaotic or totally financially ruinous, your brain knows the rules of that game. It has a script for how to survive being broke. It has a script for how to survive a toxic partner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The unknown, on the other hand, even if the unknown is, a healthy, loving marriage or having a robust savings account, that feels unpredictable. And to a traumatized brain, unpredictable means we might die.
That is so wild. So the pattern isn't a punishment at all?
Not at all. It's your brain blindly clinging to a familiar script because it is just terrified of what happens if it drops the act.
Wait, so my brain will actually choose the misery it knows over the happiness it doesn't?
Yep, every time.
Yeah.
Until you intervene.
That is just wild. But it perfectly sets up the problem. We can't just try harder within a system that's actively working against us. So how do we actually, take the coat off?
Well, this brings us to the first phase of McKinney's focus reset, which is identity. You have to start at the absolute root.
Right. And McKinney defines identity pretty simply, just as how you see yourself.
Yes. And to illustrate how profound this shift has to be, she uses this really powerful biblical analogy.
Oh, right. The story of Israel leaving Egypt from Deuteronomy chapter 6. The core of this analogy is really striking. When the Israelites were finally freed from slavery, Yahweh could have taken them straight to the promised land.
Geographically, it wasn't even that far.
Right. It was like an 11-day journey or something. But he deliberately didn't. Instead, they went through this massive delay, a long, really arduous period of wandering in the wilderness.
And the why behind that deliberate delay is everything here. Because they had spent generations in bondage. They had a literal slavery mindset. Their entire identity was built around surviving as victims.
So they were still wearing the heavy winter coat.
Exactly. Yahweh had to break those broken patterns and fundamentally restructure their identity. Because, if he hadn't, they wouldn't have been able to sustain the promise once they got there.
I have to push back here, though, on behalf of anyone listening who feels totally stuck right now, because when you are trapped in a loop, say you're trying to build a business and hitting a wall for the 5th year in a row.
Yeah, that's incredibly frustrating.
Right. Any delay feels like a punishment. If I'm struggling, being told I'm just in a wilderness restructuring phase sounds honestly deeply infuriating.
I completely get that. It feels like a cop-out.
Yeah. Why wouldn't getting the promised land, getting the money, the success, the peace, why wouldn't that just instantly fix the mindset?
Because you cannot sustain a reality that your internal identity rejects.
Wait, say that again?
You cannot sustain a reality that your internal identity rejects. If you take a person who fundamentally believes they are a helpless victim, and you suddenly hand them millions of dollars and a perfect relationship, their internal survival patterns are going to panic.
Oh, because it's unfamiliar.
Exactly. The brain will say, this is unfamiliar territory, this is dangerous, and it will subconsciously begin to sabotage the money and destroy the relationship until the person is right back in the familiar chaos they actually know how to survive.
Wow.